Captain Jun Kim stood at the viewing window of the diplomatic ship Olive Branch *. Stars stretched out before him like tiny diamonds on black velvet. After 3 weeks of travel, they had finally arrived at their destination, the massive space station that served as headquarters for the Galactic Conclave. "It's bigger than I expected," said Suk Park, stepping up beside him. As the ship's diplomatic officer, she had spent months studying the 17 alien species that made up the Conclave. June nodded. "And we are very small in comparison." The station hung in space like a giant metal flower, with curved petals extending from a central hub. Each petal represented one of the member species. Lights twinkled across its surface, marking windows, docking ports, and defense systems. "Are you nervous?" Suk asked. "Should I be?" June smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "We're just 2 humans hoping to make friends with 17 alien civilizations. What could go wrong?" Suk laughed softly. "When you put it that way." A voice came over the ship's speakers. "Captain Kim, we are cleared to dock. The Conclave welcoming party is standing by." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Jun replied. He straightened his dark blue uniform and turned to Suk. "Let's go make history." The docking bay was filled with representatives from various Conclave species. Some looked almost human. Others were so different that June struggled to tell which end was the front. The air smelled of strange spices and mechanical oil. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin stepped forward. Its head was hairless, with 4 small eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When it spoke, its mouth barely moved, but the words came through clearly in June's earpiece translator. "I am Coordinator Elix of the Mayoran people. On behalf of the Galactic Conclave, I welcome you, humans." June bowed slightly. "Thank you, Coordinator. I am Captain Jun Kim of Earth, and this is Diplomatic Officer Suk Park. We are honored to be here." Elix's upper eyes blinked. "The High Council is eager to meet with you, but first, you must be processed and briefed on station protocols." For the next 3 hours, June and Suk followed Elix through a series of rooms. They submitted to medical scans, answered questions about Earth, and received visitor badges that would track their movements on the station. "You understand," Elix explained, "security is important. Many species here have histories of conflict with each other. The Conclave exists to prevent wars and promote trade." "Of course," Suk said. "Earth's nations had similar organizations before we unified." Elix led them to their quarters, a simple but comfortable suite with 2 bedrooms, a meeting area, and facilities adapted for human needs. "Rest now," Elix said. "Tomorrow, you will meet the High Council." After Elix left, Jun sat heavily on a couch that was slightly too low for human comfort. "What do you think?" he asked Suk. She considered her answer carefully. "They're organized, efficient, but something feels off, like we're being processed rather than welcomed." "Exactly." Suk checked her data pad. "According to the schedule, we have a welcome dinner in 3 hours. We should prepare." The welcome dinner took place in a large hall with a domed ceiling. Stars were visible overhead through a transparent section. Round tables filled the room, each hosting a mix of species. At the center was a raised platform where the most important guests sat. June and Suk were led to a table near this platform. Their tabblemates included a reptilian drav, 2 insectoid krell, and a floating gas-filled creature called a mist weaver. "So you are the humans," the drav said, its scaled face unreadable. "You look like soft prey." June's translator hesitated on the word prey, suggesting it might have multiple meanings. "We are explorers and traders," Jun replied carefully. "Earth hopes to learn from the Conclave and contribute our own knowledge." The mist weaver pulsed with blue light. Newcomers always bring interesting perspectives. The Voidborn may not like that. "The Voidborn?" Suk asked. The table went quiet. The Krell's antennae flattened against their heads. The founders, one Krell finally chittered. "The first species to achieve space travel in our region." "They Guide the conclave. Before June could ask more questions, a hush fell over the room. On the central platform, a group of tall, slender aliens appeared. They had gray skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their eyes were completely black, without visible pupils. "The Voidborn High Council," whispered the Drav. "Show respect. Do not stare." The tallest Voidborn stepped forward. Its voice echoed through the hall without any visible amplification. "I am High Arbiter Vex. For 10,000 cycles, the Conclave has maintained peace among the stars. Today we welcome representatives from Earth, a world that has recently achieved faster than light travel." All eyes turned to June and Suk. "Captain Kim, please join us," Vex said, gesturing to the platform. June stood and walked forward. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching his every move. On the platform, he bowed to Vex. "High Arbiter, Earth is grateful for this opportunity. We come with open hands and open minds." Vex's face showed no expression. "The Conclave evaluates all newcomers carefully, Captain. Your species has a violent history." "We have grown beyond our violent past," Jun said. "Earth is unified now, focused on exploration and knowledge." "So you claim." Vex circled Jun slowly. "Yet our observers report that your world still maintains military forces." Jun felt a chill. Earth had sent no formal communications before his mission. How did they have observers? "All civilizations need defense," Jun replied carefully. "But Earth seeks peace." Vex stopped directly in front of Jun. "We shall see. For now, you are guests of the Conclave. Learn our ways. Follow our rules. The Council will decide if humans are ready to join galactic society." Jun bowed again, keeping his eyes down as Elix had instructed during their briefing. "We understand." As the dinner continued, Jun and Suk met representatives from other species. Some seemed genuinely friendly, asking questions about Earth. Others were coldly polite or openly suspicious. Later, back in their quarters, Suk pulled up information on her datapad. "The Voidborn control almost everything," she said. "They hold the key positions in the Council. They set policy. And the other species just accept it." June looked out the window at the vast station. "Did you notice how some of them seemed afraid? Especially the Krell." "Yes, and I've been reviewing the Conclave legal codes they gave us." Suk showed him the screen. "June, these aren't treaties between equals. These are rules imposed by the Voidborn on everyone else. So the Conclave isn't the peaceful coalition we were led to believe. It's more like an empire," Suk said, "with very strict rules and harsh punishments." Jun sighed. "We need to be careful. Our orders are to establish diplomatic relations, not cause trouble. Let's continue observing and report back to Earth when we can." Neither of them realized that their conversation was being monitored, or that they had already broken several minor Conclave regulations without knowing it. Nor could they know that the next day would bring a cultural misunderstanding that would change the fate of humanity and the entire galactic conclave forever. As Captain Jun Kim prepared for sleep that night, he thought about Earth, 4 light years away. He wondered if he was doing the right thing by seeking to join this conclave. Something felt wrong about the whole situation, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. "We'll figure it out tomorrow," he whispered to himself as he drifted off to sleep. One step at a time. Across the station, High Arbiter Vex was reviewing reports about Earth. The humans had presented themselves as a newly space-capable species, but Voidborn intelligence suggested they were hiding something. Vex did not like surprises. The Conclave had maintained order for millennia by ensuring the Voidborn remained dominant. These humans would need to be taught their place, one way or another. Admiral Hanley sat in the dark command center of Earth Fleet Headquarters, located deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The only light came from screens showing the execution of Captain Jun Kim. Han's face remained still, but his hands gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles turned white. The broadcast had been intercepted by Earth's deep space monitoring stations just hours ago. Now, military and political leaders from across Earth watched in horror as Captain Kim stood before the conclave tribunal. For the crime of disrespect to the High Arbiter, a Voidborn judge announced, the human Jum Kim is sentenced to immediate execution. On the screen, Suk Park could be seen screaming, held back by 4 guards. He didn't know. It's a cultural misunderstanding. Please. The camera focused on Jun's face. He stood straight, looking directly at the High Arbiter Vex. Even facing death, he showed no fear. Let the sentence be carried out, ordered Vex. The screen went dark for a moment. When the image returned, Captain Kim's body lay on the floor. Admiral Lee pressed a button, and the recording stopped. The lights in the command center slowly brightened. That's all of it, he said, his voice low and controlled. The conclave has executed our diplomat for making eye contact with their leader during yesterday's formal meeting. A cultural offense he had no way of knowing about. President Ta stood up at the head of the table. Her face was grim. What about Officer Park? Unknown, replied Intelligence Director Jun. The broadcast ends there. We must assume she is being held prisoner, possibly facing similar charges. The room fell silent. Around the table sat the 12 members of Earth's Defense Council, the highest military and civilian leaders of humanity. President Ta broke the silence. They killed a human diplomat over a misunderstanding. They ignored his explanation. They'd broadcast his execution as a warning. She looked around the table. Recommendations. Defense Secretary Jin Yoon spoke first. Madam President, the conclave has shown what they think of humans. It's time we show them what humanity is capable of. You're suggesting Operation Thunderclap? Asked the President. Jin nodded. We hoped we would never need it, but this is exactly the scenario we prepared for. Admiral Lee pulled up a new display showing the Sol system. Secret military installations lit up across all planets and moons. We are ready. The question is, do we commit everything or hold some forces in reserve? President Ta looked at each council member. We need to vote. This will change humanity's path forever. One by one, they voted. The decision was unanimous. Operation Thunderclap is authorized, President Tai announced. Admiral Lee, you have command of the Earth Retribution Fleet. Your orders are to secure justice for Captain Kim and ensure the safety of Officer Park and all future human diplomats. Admiral Lee stood. I understand, Madam President. The fleet will be ready in 6 hours. Throughout the Sol system, hidden bases sprang to life. On Mars, massive doors opened in what appeared to be natural canyons, revealing underground hangars filled with warships. In orbit around Jupiter, civilian research stations transformed, outer shells falling away to reveal military vessels. On Earth, millions watched the news in shock. For decades, they had been told that humanity was just beginning its journey to the stars. Now they learned the truth. Earth had been preparing for war since the discovery of alien ruins on Mars in 2087. Fellow citizens, President Tai addressed the world. Today we learned that the galaxy is not the peaceful place we hoped for. Captain Jun Kim was executed for a simple cultural misunderstanding. The Galactic Conclave has shown us that might makes right in their domain. They believe humans are weak. They are about to learn how wrong they are. In the asteroid belt, mining operations that had seemed ordinary suddenly revealed their true purpose. Each asteroid base housed dozens of warships. From the moons of Saturn, more vessels emerged. But the true surprise came from beyond Neptune. In the cold darkness of the Oort cloud, massive construction facilities activated. These had been Earth's best-kept secret, factories building the most powerful warships ever created by humans. From these hidden facilities came the Dreadnoughts, each one larger than any civilian city, armed with weapons that could shatter planets. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. 500,000 Dreadnoughts, built in total secrecy over 30 years. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the ESS** Retribution**. Around him, officers prepared for the first faster-than-light jump. On the main screen, he could see thousands of ships forming up. "Status report," he ordered. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said his second-in-command, Captain Min. "The fleet is at full strength. 500,000 dreadnoughts, plus support vessels. 2 million personnel. The most powerful military force ever assembled." Lee nodded. "And the mission objectives?" Min brought up a display showing the Conclave station. "Primary objective: secure Conclave leadership and those responsible for Captain Kim's execution. Secondary objective: locate and extract Officer Park. Overall strategic objective: demonstrate Earth's military power and secure our position in the galactic community. Casualties: rules of engagement are clear, sir. Minimal civilian casualties. We disable rather than destroy when possible, but we will not hesitate if faced with resistance." Admiral Lee looked at the image of Captain Kim that he had placed on his console. They had trained together years ago. June had always believed in peaceful contact with alien civilizations. Lee would honor that belief by showing restraint, but he would also ensure justice. "Send the message to all ships," Lee ordered. "Operation Thunderclap begins now." In the Conclave station, Officer Sook Park sat in a small cell. She had been imprisoned after her outburst at June's execution. No one had spoken to her since. She didn't know if Earth had been informed, or what would happen next. The door to her cell opened. A Myran officer, Coordinator Alex, entered. "Diplomatic Officer Park," Alex said softly. "I come with news." Sook looked up, her eyes red from crying. "Have you come to execute me too?" Alex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "No. I come to warn you. Our long-range sensors have detected something unusual." "What do you mean?" "A large number of ships have appeared at the edge of Conclave space. They are transmitting Earth identification signals." Alex hesitated. "There are many of them." Sook felt a mix of hope and fear. "How many?" "Our sensors must be malfunctioning. They report hundreds of thousands." Sook closed her eyes. So Earth had revealed its true strength. The secret was out. "They are not malfunctioning," she said quietly. "Those are Earth ships, and they're coming for me, and for justice." Alex's skin paled to almost white. "Impossible. Your world only achieved space travel recently. You could not have built such a fleet." Sook stood up. "What you know about Earth is what we chose to share. Captain Kim was under orders to present humans as a young, developing species seeking guidance. The truth is very different." "What truth?" "That we've been preparing for this day for decades. We hoped to join the galactic community peacefully, but we were always ready in case we met hostility." Sook stepped closer to Alex. "You executed our diplomat over a misunderstanding. Now you will meet the real Earth." On the station, alarms began to sound. The first wave of Earth ships had arrived. Admiral Lee watched on the main screen as his fleet surrounded the Conclave station. Smaller Conclave vessels tried to form a defensive line, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. "Open a channel to the station," Lee ordered. The face of High Arbiter Vex appeared on screen. For the first time, the Voidborn leader showed emotion. Shock. "This is Admiral Hanley of the Earth Retribution Fleet. You have executed a human diplomat in violation of all civilized laws. You will surrender those responsible and release Officer Sook Park immediately. Failure to comply will result in the full might of humanity being brought against you." Vex's black eyes widened. "You deceived us. You presented yourselves as a young species, and you presented yourselves as a peaceful coalition," Lee replied. "We both kept secrets. The difference is, we didn't execute anyone over a cultural misunderstanding." Around the Conclave station, Earth dreadnoughts took position. Each was larger than the station itself, bristling with weapons that could reduce it to atoms in seconds. "You have 1 hour to comply," Admiral Lee said. "After that, we will take what we came for." As the screen went dark, Captain Min stepped closer to Admiral Lee. "Sir, The Conclave military forces are mobilizing from nearby systems. Lee nodded. As expected, deploy the fleet according to plan and prepare a special operations team. We're going to get Officer Park back. The largest military operation in human history had begun, and the Galactic Conclave was about to learn a painful lesson. Humans protected their own. The hour passed quickly. On the Conclave station, chaos reigned. Species that had lived under Voidborn rule for centuries watched in shock as Earth's massive fleet surrounded them. The station's own defenses were powerful, but nothing compared to the armada they now faced. High Arbiter Vex stood in the Conclave command center, his gray skin now almost white with stress. The other Voidborn council members huddled nearby, whispering urgently. "How is this possible?" demanded one counselor. "Their world showed no signs of such technology." "They deceived us," Vex replied. "They hid their true strength." A Myron officer approached cautiously. "High Arbiter, our reinforcements are 3 hours away at minimum. We cannot hold against this fleet." Vex's black eyes narrowed. "We do not surrender to primitives. The Voidborn have ruled for 10,000 cycles. We will not bow to these newcomers." On the main screen, a countdown timer reached 0. The humans' hour was up. Aboard the Retribution Asterisk, Admiral Lee received the news with a grim nod. "No response from the Conclave leadership," reported Communications Officer Hannah. "They've increased power to their defensive shields, but have made no move to release Officer Park." "Very well," Lee said. "Begin Phase 2. Throughout Conclave space, thousands of Earth ships appeared near key installations. Communication relays, defense platforms, and military outposts suddenly found themselves facing overwhelming force. On the bridge of the Dreadnought Indomitable Commander Yuna Choi led the special operation to retrieve Officer Park. "All teams in position," reported her tactical officer. "Shield disruptors ready." Yuna nodded. "Remember, minimal casualties. We want Officer Park alive and safe." She pressed a button on her command chair. "Begin the operation." In her cell, Sook Park felt a strange vibration. The lights flickered, then went out completely. For a moment, everything was dark and silent. When emergency lights came on, she heard shouting in the corridor outside. Weapon fire. Then silence again. The door to her cell slid open. A figure in black combat armor stood there, helmet obscuring their face. The figure raised a hand to their helmet, and the faceplate turned transparent. "Commander Yuna Choi, Earth Special Forces," the woman said with a small smile. "Sorry we're late, Officer Park." Sook stared in disbelief. "How did you get here?" "The station's defenses are now under our control," Yuna finished. She handed Sook a small earpiece. "Put this in. Admiral Lee wants to speak with you." Sook inserted the device and immediately heard the Admiral's voice. "Officer Park, are you injured?" "No, Admiral," she replied. "But Captain Kim." "We know," Lee said, his voice solemn. "His death will not go unanswered. Commander Choi will bring you to safety. Then we deal with the Conclave leadership." Yuna handed Sook a sidearm. "Stay close. We're heading to the Council chambers." Across Conclave space, the pattern repeated. Earth forces disabled rather than destroyed. They captured key installations intact. Military outposts were surrounded and given simple choices: surrender or be neutralized. Most surrendered within minutes of seeing the human forces. On dozens of worlds, species that had long suffered under Voidborn rule watched in amazement. The supposedly primitive humans were systematically dismantling the Conclave's military with surgical precision. Among these observers were the Krell. Once a proud warrior race, they had been conquered by the Voidborn centuries ago and forced to serve as soldiers and laborers. Now, from their homeworld, Krell leaders watched the humans' display of power with growing interest. "These humans fight differently," said Krell War Chief Traz, his antennae quivering with excitement. "They disable rather than destroy. They avoid civilian casualties. They show honor, agreed Elder Chris. Perhaps they are the allies we have waited for. In the Conclave Council chambers, High Arbiter Vex and the Voidborn leadership prepared for their last stand. They had barricaded themselves in, surrounded by their most loyal guards. The humans have taken control of most station systems, reported a Voidborn commander. Our defenses are failing systematically. Where are our reinforcements? Demanded Vex. Engaged by human forces throughout our territory. They will not reach us in time. Suddenly, the massive doors to the chamber began to glow red-hot. The metal melted inward, creating a perfect circle. The circle fell to the floor with a heavy clang. Through the opening stepped Commander Yuna Choi, Officer Suk Park, and a squad of Earth Special Forces. High Arbiter Vex, Yuma announced. By authority of Earth Command, you are under arrest for the unlawful execution of Captain Jun Kim. Vex's guards raised their weapons, but Suk stepped forward. Don't, she warned. Look outside. On the large viewing window of the council chamber, the view of space had changed. Hundreds of Earth Dreadnoughts now surrounded the station at close range, weapons aimed directly at the council chamber. If those weapons fire, Suk continued, this entire section of the station will be vaporized. No one will survive. Vex stared at her with hatred. You would destroy this station, kill thousands of innocent beings. No, Suk replied. We wouldn't. That's the difference between us, High Arbiter. We don't execute people for cultural misunderstandings. We don't sacrifice innocence. Those ships are there to make sure you understand that your choice is simple. Surrender peacefully, or be taken by force. The Voidborn guards looked to Vex, waiting for orders. After a long moment, Vex slowly raised his hands. The Voidborn. Surrender. Admiral Lee watched from the Retribution as Commander Choi's team escorted the Conclave leadership onto transport ships. Officer Park stood tall beside Commander Choi, her face showing a mix of grief and relief. All primary objectives achieved. Admiral, reported Captain Min. The Conclave leadership is in custody. Officer Park is safe. We've secured all major Conclave military installations with minimal casualties. Lee nodded. And the secondary objectives? We're receiving messages from multiple species across Conclave space. Many are offering alliance or requesting protection from Voidborn reprisals. Most interesting are the Krell. Their leaders are requesting direct communication with you. The Krell. Lee raised an eyebrow. The insectoid species. Put them through. The screen showed a Krell in ornate armor, its compound eyes gleaming. Admiral Lee. I am War Chief Traz of the Krell. For centuries, my people have lived under Voidborn dominance. We have waited for someone strong enough to challenge them. Your humans have accomplished in days what we could not achieve in generations. Lee studied the alien carefully. What are you proposing, War Chief? Alliance. Traz replied simply. The Krell were once a proud warrior race. We can fight alongside you. And we are not alone. Many species have suffered under Voidborn rule. They watch you now, with hope. We didn't come to start a revolution, Lee said. We came for justice for our diplomat. Yet you may have started one anyway. Traz clicked his mandibles in what might have been a smile. The Voidborn call themselves the Conclave, but they are conquerors. You have exposed their weakness. Now the galaxy will change. As the Earth fleet secured the Conclave station, Officer Suk Park stood in the room where Captain Kim had been executed. A small pool of dried blood remained on the floor. Suk knelt beside it, touching the stain gently. I'm sorry, Jun, she whispered. I couldn't save you. But your death has changed everything. Commander Yuna joined her, removing her helmet. He died with honor. From what I heard, looking his executioner in the eye until the end. Suk nodded. He believed in peaceful contact. He wanted Earth to join the galactic community as equals. Not like this. Sometimes peace must be enforced, Yuna said quietly. Admiral Lee has ordered a memorial service. Captain Kim's body will be returned to Earth with full honors. Suk stood up. And what happens to the conclave now? That's not for me to decide, Una replied. But Admiral Lee is calling for a gathering of all spacefaring species, a convention to establish new rules. New rules, Suk repeated. A galaxy where cultural differences are respected, not punished by death. That's the idea. Una smiled slightly. It seems Captain Kim's mission may succeed after all, just not in the way anyone expected. Outside the window, Earth's dreadnoughts held position around the station, their massive hulls blocking out the stars. The message they sent was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage. They came seeking friendship, but they had brought overwhelming force to ensure they would never be treated as less than equals again. The reckoning had come to the galactic conclave, and the future of all species would never be the same. 1 week after Earth's fleet arrived in conclave space, Admiral Hanley called for a convention of all spacefaring species. The location was symbolic, the same conclave station where Captain Jum Kim had been executed. Representatives from all 17 conclave species attended. Many came in fear, others with hope. Additionally, delegates from a dozen previously suppressed civilizations arrived, quickly allying with humanity after seeing the Voidborn power broken. The main assembly chamber had been transformed. The raised platform where the Voidborn once ruled was gone, replaced by a circular arrangement of equal seats. At the center stood a simple memorial to Captain Jum Kim, a hologram showing him in his diplomatic uniform, smiling slightly as if greeting new friends. Admiral Lee entered wearing his formal dress uniform. Officer Suk Park walked beside him, now appointed as Earth's chief diplomat. Behind them came President Tai and other Earth leaders, who had arrived on the fastest ships once the station was secured. Representatives of the galaxy, Admiral Lee began, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. Humanity did not want war. Captain Kim came in peace, seeking friendship. Instead, he was executed for a cultural misunderstanding. Lee paused, looking around the room. Species of all shapes and sizes watched him. Some with eyes, some with sensory organs humans had no words for, all listening intently. Now you understand who we are, Lee continued. You have seen our strength. The question is, what happens next? At a signal, the captured Voidborn leaders were brought into the chamber. High Arbiter Vex and the others who had ordered Kim's execution stood in simple gray clothing, their hands bound. They expected execution, the same punishment they had so casually inflicted on Captain Kim. Many have suggested we applied the same justice to you that you applied to our diplomat, Lee said, addressing the Voidborn directly. A life for a life. That would be simple. The chamber was completely silent. Vex stood straighter, preparing to face death. But we are not like you, Lee said firmly. We do not execute those who violate customs they don't understand. That is the very reason we are here today. Murmurs spread through the gathered representatives. This was not what anyone expected. President Ta stepped forward. For too long, the Voidborn have ruled through fear. They have suppressed other species, imposed their culture, and punished differences. Today that ends. She gestured to Officer Suk Park, who unveiled a large display showing a document. This is the Galactic Charter, Suk explained. A new beginning. Under this charter, no species shall dominate another. No culture shall impose its values through force, and no innocent shall be executed for the crime of being different. Minister Ji-1, Earth's diplomatic leader, then addressed the assembly. What happens to the Voidborn who ordered Captain Kim's death? They will stand trial under this new charter. They will receive something they did not give our friend. A fair hearing, with proper translation, and punishments that fit their crimes. The Krell War Chief Traz stepped forward, his insect-like form moving with surprising grace. And what of the power vacuum? Without the Voidborn dominating, who will lead? No one species will lead, replied Admiral Lee. The Charter establishes a council with representatives from all spacefaring civilizations. Decisions affecting the galaxy will be made together, with equal voices. A mist weaver pulsed with blue light. And Earth's fleet. The 500,000 dreadnoughts. Will humans become the new conquerors? It was the question many had been afraid to ask. All eyes turned to the humans. President Ta smiled. A fair concern. Let me show you something. On the large screens around the chamber, images appeared showing Earth's dreadnoughts. But they were changing. Construction crews swarmed over them, removing weapons, adding new sections. Most of our fleet was never intended for permanent military use, Tai explained. They were built to ensure humanity's survival in a potentially hostile galaxy. Now they will serve their true purpose. Admiral Lee continued the explanation. 300,000 of our dreadnoughts will be converted to exploration vessels, scientific platforms, and humanitarian ships. They will map unknown regions, study cosmic phenomena, and provide aid to worlds in need. Another 100,000 will become trading vessels and cultural exchange platforms, added Suk, to share knowledge, art, and resources throughout the galaxy. And the remaining 100,000? Asked a Drav representative, scales bristling with suspicion. Will remain as defense forces, Lee acknowledged honestly, not to conquer or control, but to ensure the charter is respected, to protect the peace we established today. The gathering erupted in discussion. Some species welcomed the plan, while others remained cautious, but all recognized the fundamental change taking place. 10 years later, Officer Suk Park, now Ambassador Park, stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The galaxy had entered an unprecedented era of cooperation and advancement. Captain Kim's memorial had grown into a museum dedicated to mutual understanding between species. A decade ago, my friend died because we failed to understand each other, Suk said to the assembled delegates. But his death led to something greater than any of us could have imagined. A true community of worlds where differences are celebrated, not punished. The council chamber was now housed on a massive station called Unity, jointly built by dozens of species, including humans. Earth's dreadnoughts, now repurposed, had explored hundreds of new star systems, made contact with 32 previously unknown civilizations, and helped terraform worlds that once seemed uninhabitable. The Voidborn still existed as a species, but their monopoly on power was long gone. Those directly responsible for Kim's death had been sentenced to work in the most difficult terraforming projects, bringing life to dead worlds as penance for the life they had taken. High Arbiter Vex, now simply Citizen Vex-X, had surprised everyone by becoming an advocate for cultural understanding. His experiences as a prisoner and his observations of humanity had fundamentally changed him. He now taught at the Galactic Academy, warning students about the dangers of cultural arrogance. After the council session ended, Suk walked to a viewing platform overlooking the massive harbor where ships from across the galaxy docked. Countless vessels of different designs represented hundreds of species, all working together. Admiral Lee, now retired from military service but serving as Earth's senior council member, joined her at the window. "Quite a view," he said quietly. Suk nodded. "Do you think June would be proud of what his death created?" Lee considered the question carefully. He wanted peaceful contact. He wanted Earth to join the galactic community. In that sense, yes, he succeeded, just not in the way anyone expected. "Sometimes I wonder if there could have been another way," Suk admitted. "If we could have achieved this without showing our military strength." "History doesn't deal in what-ifs," Lee replied. "The Voidborn only respected power. We needed to speak in a language they understood before we could teach them a new one." In the harbor outside, a new vessel was being christened, a sleek exploration ship built jointly by humans and Krell. On its hull was the name Jum Kim *. "His name will live on," Lee said, pointing to the ship. "Not as a symbol of conflict, but of discovery." Suk smiled. He would have liked that. As they watched, the Jum Kim * departed on its maiden voyage, heading toward the galactic core on a mission of peaceful exploration. Ships from a dozen worlds formed an honor guard around it, their lights blinking in salute. The message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity had come seeking peace. They preferred friendship, but they had brought overwhelming force to ensure they would never be victims, and they would never, ever forget their own. In the vast darkness of space, Captain Jun Kim's legacy continued. A galaxy united not by conquest, but by mutual respect and understanding. Not because it was easy, but because humanity had made it the only option. The greatest tribute to the fallen captain was not the museum that bore his name or the ship that carried it to the stars. It was the peace that his death had ultimately purchased, a peace guarded by the ever-present knowledge that if pushed, humanity would respond not with hundreds, not with thousands, but with 500,000 dreadnoughts. And next time, they might not be so merciful.